I used to think disrespect was loud shouts, slammed doors, name-calling. Turns out, the most brutal kind is quiet. It slips into the room on a Tuesday evening and sits at your table like it belongs there. We were making dinner. Well, I was. Liam, my boyfriend of 4 years, was scrolling through his phone with that absent smile he reserves for people who aren't me. I was dicing onions when he let the sentence fall as casually as a grocery list item. Oh, by the way, I'm going to Tori's birthday on Saturday. It's just high school people, so you're not invited. Don't wait up. The knife stopped. A little pile of onions waited for something else to happen. An explanation, a joke, a kidding. Liam didn't look up. He thumbed another notification. The stovetop ticked steady as a metronome. Tori, I said, still somehow politely. Your ex-girlfriend, Tori. Yeah, big 30, whole crew from senior year. He flicked a glance at me, measuring. You wouldn't know anyone. It's a vibe, you know. Nostalgia. Nostalgia has a scent, I've learned. It smells like my boyfriend's expensive cologne, the one I bought him last Christmas, on someone else's skin. I said nothing for 3 careful seconds. The air between us became thin. If I breathed too fast, I might say something I'd spend all week unpacking. He waited, phone poised, like he was braced for the fight he'd already written for us. I surprised both of us. Enjoy yourself, I said, and went back to the onions. He blinked once, twice, then half smiled like he'd been deprived of a dessert he'd set his hopes on. That's it. You're cool with it. You're going either way, right? Well, yeah. I just thought you'd make it a thing. Not tonight. I slid onions into the pan. The oil hissed. He watched me, disappointed. There wasn't smoke. Saturday arrived dressed for a wedding. Liam spent 3 hours getting ready. The cologne, the suit he wore to his cousin's reception. Cufflinks I bought him when we still used the word we like a promise and not a question. For a nostalgia vibe, he was polished like an intention. You look nice, I said when he came out. It wasn't a compliment, it was a timestamp. Thanks. He kissed my cheek, leaving a neat lipstick-sized mark in reverse. Mine on him, his on me. Ownership confused. I might crash at Ben's if it runs late. Don't wait up, I asked, gentle, almost amused. He grinned. Totally okay. Totally. The word tasted like a door closing without a click. The second our front door shut, I turned my phone off. Not silent, not do not disturb, off. The kind of off that means you're choosing your life on purpose. A bag was already packed. People hear that part and think I was plotting revenge. I wasn't. I had plans with my sister Draw 2 hours away, new coffee spot, a neighborhood street fair, ordinary joy. I'd texted her on Tuesday before Liam's announcement, asking if the weekend worked. It did. It still did. I left a note on the kitchen island, not a manifesto, just a sentence. At Dar's back Sunday night. Then I drove with the radio off, with the city softening behind me, with the space around my ribcage finally expanding. When I pulled into Dar's driveway, I turned my phone back on. It convulsed in my hand. 8 texts in the first hour. Hey, you didn't answer. Did you see my last text? Hello? You're ignoring me. Seriously, wow, mature. Whatever. Enjoy your tantrum. I showed Dr. R. She scanned. Gave me the sister look. The one that mixes love with outrage on your behalf. He told you not to wait up. Exactly. So what are you doing? Not waiting up. We ate late. We laughed. We tried on sunglasses at the drugstore like teenagers killing time. I slept like someone who had finally placed a boundary exactly where it belonged, between my heart and someone else's entitlement. Sunday morning, my phone greeted me with 20 more texts and 5 voicemails. The tone had shapeshifted from cocky to catastrophizing. Okay, this isn't funny anymore. Are you safe, Lydia? Answer me. I came home. Your car is gone. What is this? Call me. I'm freaking out. Just tell me you're alive. I'll even apologize if that's what you want. Fine. I called Dr. R. She says you're fine now. I'm pissed. Come home. We need to talk. Adra handed me a mug of coffee with both palms like she was returning something delicate. He called me at 11, she said. I told him you were fine and enjoying your weekend. That's all he needed to know. Thank you. Are you going to answer him? I looked at the screen at the arc from smug to scared to summons. I will, I said when I'm home. The city was dusky when I pulled into our lot at 8:30 p.m. Our living room lights glowed like a stage set. I braced shoulders back, keys quiet, then opened the door. Liam was on the couch with his laptop, eyes furious and wet. He stood so fast the charger cord yanked free. Where the hell have you been at Dar's? I left a note. A note. You disappear for 2 days with a note. You said not to wait up. I didn't. That's not what that means. And you know it. He was pacing hands, slicing the air. It means don't stay up late, not vanish. God! Lydia! I set my bag down like laying a card face up. What does it mean then? It means he stopped realizing the trap wasn't mine. It was his. It means don't make a thing of it. So I didn't. You were going out with Tori and the high school crew, and you specifically told me I wasn't invited. I made my own plans. You ignored all my texts. You were at your ex party, having a great time. I didn't want to interrupt. This is about Tori. His mouth curled around the name like it tasted better than it should. It's about respect, I said, and I felt the shape of the word as I spoke it. The edges and corners I'd been rounding off for years. You told me not to wait up. You told me I wasn't welcome. Then you got dressed like a groom and sprayed cologne I bought you to go impress people I've never met. That's not fair, neither is what you did. His face shifted as if a stagehand yanked a lever and changed the light cue. Fury cut to softness to the gentle voice that always arrived just before I caved. Baby, I didn't mean to exclude you. It's just one party. It was a nostalgia thing in your wedding suit. I wanted to look nice for Tori. It wasn't like that. Then explain what it was like. Because from where I'm standing, my boyfriend dressed for a date with his ex told me I wasn't welcome and wanted me to applaud. You're twisting this. Am I, or am I, finally saying it out loud? We stood in the kitchen, the onions where I'd left them, a ring of oil dried in the pan like a fossil. He stared at the stove instead of me. I've learned that's where people look when they're composing a defense. So what? He tried. You're breaking up with me over a party I don't know yet. I felt my pulse slow. The calm that happens when you've already made the hardest choice, the choice to stop pretending. I need to think. How much thinking does this need? Enough to answer a different question. What question? Whether I want to be with someone who thinks this is acceptable. His eyes glistened and then click went cold. You're being ridiculous. Everyone lets their partner hang with old friends. Hang out. Sure, but this wasn't hanging out. This was a calculated disrespect. If I told you I was going to my ex's birthday, told you not to come and dress to kill, would you have been fine? Silence. He didn't even try to fill it. That's what I thought. He followed me down the hallway, words tumbling over themselves. We're not done. Pick up your phone when I call. You don't get to ignore me. I opened the bedroom door, slid inside, and for the first time in our years together, locked it. He knocked for 5 minutes. Then the apartment went quiet. On the other side of the door, I lay down in the dark and listened to the stillness. People say silence is empty. To me, that night, it was full of boundaries of breath of a life that didn't require me to audition for a part I already had. Outside, his footsteps retreated. Inside, I slept. They say after a storm, there's calm. But sometimes the calm is just silence stretched thin over tension. That's what our apartment became. Quiet but heavy. Liam and I still shared the same walls, but not the same space. He'd leave early for work. I'd stay late at mine. Meals were separate words rationed. We were two ghosts haunting the life we'd built together. On Wednesday night, he finally tried to crack the ice. We can't keep doing this, he said, leaning on the kitchen doorway, like he owned the air between us. I agree, I said, closing my laptop. He blinked, caught off guard by my calm. Then talk to me, Lydia, please. What would you like me to say? That you're overreacting, that this weird punishment is over? I stared at him for a long second. You think distance is punishment, isn't it? No, it's protection. He sighed dramatically, shaking his head. You're acting like I cheated or something. I went to a birthday party. You went to your ex-girlfriend's birthday party, I corrected. You told me I wasn't invited. You got dressed like you were going to a gala. And you said don't wait up. Liam crossed his arms. You keep twisting my words. No, I'm replaying them exactly as you said them. For a second, I saw it. The flicker of doubt, the realization that deep down he knew. But pride is louder than conscience. He turned, muttering, unbelievable, and left the room. By Thursday, the silence between us was unbearable enough for him to recruit help. That evening, while I was reading on the couch, my phone buzzed unknown number. Hello, Lydia. This is Diane, his mother. I already knew where this was going. Hello, Diane. Her voice was tight, urgent. We need to talk about Liam. Do we? He's devastated. He says you've been giving him the silent treatment for over a week. Is that true? I've been civil, just quiet. Over a party? Her disbelief practically hissed through the line. Did he tell you whose party it was? His old friend Tori? His ex-girlfriend Tori, the one he spent 3 hours dressing up for while telling me not to wait up. A pause, then softer. Well, she's allowed to have friends. She is. And I'm allowed to have boundaries. Boundaries, Lydia. Relationships are about compromise. I agree. I compromised for 4 years, Diane. This time I'm asking for respect instead. Respect? She scoffed. You're throwing away a good man over your pride. Then maybe pride's what's left when respect is gone. Don't get smart with me, young lady. He loves you. Then he has a funny way of showing it. I hung up. Not because I wanted to, but because the conversation had already ended long before either of us spoke. Friday night, I came home from work to find Liam sitting on the couch with that forced calm he uses when the few are about to manipulate you into guilt. I talked to my mom, he started. I gathered she's worried about you. Of course she is, I said lightly. She raised a man who thinks disrespect is nostalgia. He exhaled, pinching the bridge of his nose. Lydia, you're impossible sometimes. And you're predictable. That landed. His jaw clenched, his voice dropped. You're seriously not over this. I'm not angry, I said truthfully. I'm evaluating. Evaluating what? Whether this relationship is worth continuing. That stopped him cold. You're ending us over one party. It's not the party, Liam. It's the message, the dismissal. The way you told me I wasn't welcome, then got mad that I took you at your word. He looked at me like he was waiting for the old Lydia to appear. The one who'd soften, apologize, promised to move on, but she was gone. I didn't cheat, he said, as if that were the lowest possible bar for decency. No, you didn't. You just reminded me where I rank. He frowned. Rank, yes. Below your ex, below your image, below the illusion that you're the nice guy, even when you're being cruel. He stared silent, the kind of silence that tries to make the other person speak first. I didn't. When he finally did, his voice was small. You know I didn't mean it like that. I know, I said softly. That's the problem. You didn't think at all. That weekend he tried a new tactic. Ben, his closest friend, his lifelong echo chamber. Saturday morning, I was halfway through coffee when Ben showed up knocking on our door like a cop on a mission. Morning, I greeted neutral. Hey, he said, stepping inside without waiting. We need to talk about Liam. Does everyone in his life have that line memorized? Ben ignored the jab. He told me what happened. You ghosted him for 2 days just because he went to Tori's party? I tilted my head. Is that what he told you? Ben shrugged. That's what happened, right? No, I said calm. What happened is that he told me I wasn't invited to his ex-party, said not to wait up and left. So I made other plans with my sister. Yeah, but you ignored him. He told me not to wait up, I interrupted. I listened. Ben looked thrown. You're playing games. Ben, if following his instructions is a game, then I guess I win. Liam entered the living room mid-sentence, defensive energy radiating. You're twisting things again, Lydia. Ben's trying to help. I don't need help. You do. You're punishing me for something harmless. You think disrespect is harmless. It was a party, no Liam. It was a choice, and choices have consequences. Ben crossed his arms. You should forgive him. This is toxic. For a heartbeat, I considered explaining the difference between accountability and toxicity. Then I realized he'd never understand. He wasn't here to listen. He was here to convince me to fall back in line. Thanks for stopping by, Ben, I said, opening the door. We're done here. Liam's face fell. You're kicking out my friend? No, I'm kicking out your audience. Ben muttered something under his breath as he left, but I didn't catch it. I didn't care. When the door shut, Liam turned to me, voice trembling with frustration. You're isolating me from everyone. No, I said. You're watching everyone line up to tell me how unreasonable I am, and still not once have you apologized for the thing you actually did. He stared, searching for a script. I'd already rewritten mine. That night we didn't speak, but for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. I felt steady. By Tuesday, our apartment didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like the waiting room of a relationship that had already died, but no one had called time of death yet. I came home late, arms full of groceries, only to stop cold in the doorway. 3 people sat in my living room. Liam, Ben, and a third guy I didn't recognize at first. Chris, one of Liam's friends from work. Ben leaned forward, elbows on knees. Lydia, we need to talk. I dropped my keys onto the counter, too tired for theatrics. What is this, some kind of intervention? Chris gave a diplomatic half smile. We're just worried about you. Really, I set the grocery bag down. Because this looks more like an ambush. Liam stood up, hands raised like he was the reasonable one. Lydia, I can't live like this anymore. The coldness, the distance, it's not healthy. Then stop pretending you're the victim, I said quietly. Ben jumped in before Liam could respond. You're blowing this way out of proportion. He went to a party. That's it. You're treating him like he cheated. I looked at Ben, unblinking. He didn't cheat. He disrespected me. That's worse in a way. Worse, Ben's laugh was sharp. You're unbelievable. You're punishing him over nothing. Nothing, I repeated. That's an interesting word for being excluded, lied to, and then blamed for noticing. Chris tried to interject his tone gentler. Look, Lydia, we get that you're hurt, but this isn't the way to fix things. At some point, you've got to forgive, or I asked, or move on. Liam looked at me, eyes red. I said I was sorry. You said you're sorry I'm upset. I corrected. Not sorry for what you did. There's a difference. What's the difference? Liam snapped, voice rising. One takes responsibility, the other just blames me for having feelings. Ben rolled his eyes. You're overanalyzing semantics. I turned toward him slowly. No, Ben, I'm analyzing patterns. And every time Liam crosses a line, someone like you calls me dramatic for naming it. Ben stood up, voice hard. This is toxic, Lydia. You're toxic. For the first time I smiled. Not sarcastic, sad. If demanding respect makes me toxic, I'll live with that. Liam's expression twisted from pleading to anger. You're impossible. I've tried to apologize, to explain, to fix this. No, I said you've tried to make me fold. There's a difference. That was the moment his patience snapped. Fine. You know what, if you're done, I'm done too. But I'm taking half of everything. Ben nodded approvingly, as if Liam had just made a brilliant chess move. I stared at him, calm as still water. Half of everything. Yeah, we've lived together 2 years. I've contributed to what? The rent, the bills. Because last I checked, you pay me $400 toward a place that costs $1,800. His face went red. That's because I make less, and that was fine until now. He gestured around. So what? You're keeping the apartment, the furniture, everything. I'm keeping what I paid for, I said simply. You're welcome to take what's yours. He scoffed. Unbelievable. You're petty. No, I said, setting my grocery bag on the counter again, methodically unpacking apples. I'm precise. Chris shifted uneasily, eyes darting between us. Maybe we should cool off. Great idea, I said, keeping my tone light. Liam, make a list of what's yours. I'll pack it for you. Ben let out a derisive laugh. You're seriously doing this over a party? I turned to him, still calm. You keep saying party like it was a birthday balloon. It wasn't. It was a boundary test, and Liam failed. Failed? Liam barked a laugh that wasn't funny. You sound insane. Maybe, I said, walking toward the bedroom. But at least I sound like someone who knows where she stands. He followed me down the hallway. You're not seriously ending us over this. I'm seriously ending us over what this means, he glared. You'll regret this. I stopped at the doorway, turned to face him, and smiled faintly. I already did. That's why it's ending. The next morning, he was gone. So were a few shirts, his gaming console, and the framed photo of us from last year's vacation. I stood in the quiet apartment and exhaled. Not relief, not grief, just certainty. That afternoon, I wrote everything down. The lease under my name bank, transfers, receipts for furniture bills. Facts, not feelings. A list of clarity. At 7 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Liam. We need to talk about splitting things fairly. Me. Sure, write a list. Liam. Half of everything, including the deposit. Me. You're not on the lease. Liam, you can't just keep everything, Lydia. Me. I'm not keeping everything. I'm keeping mine. He didn't reply, but I could feel the anger building on the other side of that screen. 2 days later, he showed up with Diane. I should have known he wouldn't come alone. The doorbell rang at noon. When I opened it, Diane's face was already set in disapproval. This is ridiculous, she said, brushing past me. She's lived here for 2 years, and you're throwing her out like garbage. I repeated, blinking once. Do you mean your son? Her lips thinned. Don't be clever. I handed her a printed list. Here's everything Liam owns. Clothes, books, his console, a desk I bought him for Christmas. He can take them all. That's it, she said, scanning the page. A few items. What about the couch, the TV I bought those 3 years ago before he moved in? You're being spiteful. I'm being accurate. Liam crossed his arms behind her, silent, watching. I wondered if he thought this was his big redemption moment, his mother saving him from the cruel, unreasonable girlfriend. Liam paid rent, Diane said sharply. $400 a month, I corrected. That's not even a quarter of the total, and I covered all utilities. Her mouth fell open. You kept track. I kept receipts. For a long second, no one spoke. Then Liam muttered, "This isn't over." I smiled faintly. It actually is. They left with 2 boxes and a dented pride. When the door shut, the apartment finally sounded like peace. I sat on the couch, my couch, and let the silence wrap around me like a blanket instead of a punishment. For a few blissful days, the quiet in my apartment felt clean. No footsteps pacing. No phone lighting up with guilt-laced texts. Just me, my breathing, and the hum of the refrigerator. Steady, reliable, honest. But I should have known Liam wouldn't let things end gracefully. The following Wednesday, my phone buzzed again. A new number this time, a message from him. "We need to settle the deposit. I'm entitled to half." I sighed. The word entitled fit him better than any suit he owned. I replied simply, "You weren't on the lease, Liam. You have no legal claim." 5 minutes later came the reply. "You're stealing from me. Diane says that's illegal." I stared at the screen, exhaled slowly, then typed, "Diane isn't my landlord." I put the phone down and went back to my tea. That evening, I heard a knock on the door sharper than usual. I knew that rhythm. When I opened it, there they were again. Liam, Diane, and unbelievably Ben, arms crossed, faces set. "Afternoon," I said, leaning on the frame. "Should I get name tags, or are we doing this round informally?" Diane's jaw tightened. "We're here for Liam's belongings." "I already packed them," I said, gesturing toward the boxes by the entryway. "Everything on the list." She glanced down, scanning quickly. "This list is ridiculous." "Facts often are," I said. "What about the couch?" she demanded. "Mine bought before we dated." "The TV? Same." She turned to Liam like she needed confirmation that I was lying. He didn't meet her eyes. "Lydia, you're being cruel," Diane said, shaking her head. "He gave you 2 years of his life." I smiled faintly. "And in those 2 years, he paid $400 a month for a place that costs $1,800. That's $28,000 in subsidized rent. I'd say he got a fair deal." Diane froze. She hadn't done the math. I watched it click behind her eyes like an abacus tallying late realizations. Liam snapped, "You're really keeping track of every penny." "I'm keeping track of reality," I said quietly. "Because that's the part you keep rewriting." Ben crossed his arms. "You're heartless." "No," I said, "I'm done being the heart everyone steps on." They started gathering his things. The boxes, the spare monitor, a stack of old shirts. Diane hovered, muttering about forgiveness, about Christian values. I kept my mouth shut. Let her sermonize. After an hour, they were done. Liam stood by the door, a final box in his hands. "You'll regret this, Lydia," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. I looked at him for a long, quiet moment. "No, Liam. I regretted this relationship long before it ended. That's what I'm fixing." He flinched, something dark flickering across his face. Anger, disbelief, maybe the realization that the usual tricks wouldn't work here. He left without another word. Diane lingered a second longer. "He really loved you, you know." "Then he should have acted like it," I said, softly. The door closed behind her. I stood in the middle of the apartment. The light hit differently, warmer somehow. The air felt lighter. There was still an imprint on the carpet where his gaming chair had sat. I vacuumed it up. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine, sat on my couch, and made a quiet promise. No more relationships where respect feels like negotiation. 2 days later, I got an envelope in the mail. The return address made me laugh out loud. A no-name law firm from the next town over. Inside was a letter printed on cheap, crooked paper demanding $20,000, half the security deposit, plus emotional distress damages. The irony was thick enough to spread on toast. I scanned the letter, took a photo, and forwarded it to my cousin Rachel, who happens to be a paralegal. She texted back 5 minutes later. "That's not a real claim. He's not on the lease. Send me the details. I'll respond." She drafted a 2-sentence reply on her firm's letterhead. Mr. Price. Liam was not listed on the lease paid rent as a guest and has no legal claim to any portion of the deposit. Further contact will constitute harassment. I mailed it the next morning. The silence that followed wasn't just relief, it was closure. Over the next few weeks, the story started to spread. Mutual friends. The few who still reached out said Liam was telling people I'd kicked him out over nothing and stole thousands from him. One even said I'd emotionally abused him. I didn't defend myself. I didn't post cryptic stories or text explanations. I just let people believe whatever version of me made them sleep at night. Then one day, two separate messages landed in my inbox. The first was from a woman named Alyssa, who used to share an apartment with Liam before we dated. She wrote, "He told us the same lies when his last girlfriend broke up with him. Same story, different woman. Be glad you got out." The second was from a coworker of his. "He's been playing the victim card again. Just wanted to say the way you handled it. Total class." I smiled at my screen. Not satisfaction, just validation that the truth has a way of finding light, even when you stop chasing it. That weekend, I rearranged the apartment. I moved the bookshelf into the corner where his desk used to be, turned his side table into a mini bar cart, changed the curtains. It wasn't about erasing him, it was about reclaiming the space. The smell of his cologne was finally gone. When I sat down that night, the apartment felt like mine again. Not the place I'd shared, but the place I'd earned back. I poured another glass of wine, looked around, and whispered to no one in particular. This is what peace looks like. It's been 6 weeks since the night I closed the door on Liam. Funny how a single decision can divide your life into before and after. Before, I was the kind of woman who explained her boundaries until she was hoarse. After, I learned that silence is its own kind of explanation, one that doesn't need defending. The first week alone felt strange. I'd catch myself expecting the sound of his keys in the lock or the buzz of his phone on the counter. But each time I didn't hear them, the quiet grew a little more beautiful. I started new routines. Morning walks before work music, instead of news dinners at the table, instead of in front of the TV. It's remarkable how ordinary things start to feel sacred once you stop living for someone else's moods. I didn't block Liam's number, though. I wanted to see what shape his persistence would take. For a while, there was nothing. Then came one last text 3 weeks ago. "I hope you're happy. You ruined my life." I didn't respond, but quietly, I thought I am. And no, I didn't ruin it. I just stopped carrying it for you. Around that time, a coworker invited me to dinner. It wasn't a date, just an evening with people who made me laugh. Somewhere between the laughter and the soft hum of the restaurant, I realized how small my world had been with Liam. How carefully I'd kept myself folded so he could feel tall. Now the world felt wide again. Still, I didn't rush to replace him. The space he left behind wasn't a vacancy. It was a clearing, a chance to build something new without the old weight. I went through my phone one night and deleted our photos. Not in anger, just release. Each delete clicked like a heartbeat. The vacations, the anniversaries, the posed smiles that hid tiny fractures. By the last photo, I felt lighter. But the world has a funny way of keeping receipts. 2 mutual friends reached out after hearing his version of things, the one where I was controlling, vindictive, and emotionally unstable. I didn't argue. I just said, "Believe what you need to." A week later, both of them messaged again. "You were right, we saw the screenshots. He's been doing this for years." Apparently, he'd even told Tori, the ex from that infamous party, that I'd been obsessive and jealous. She didn't buy it. In fact, she sent me a private message. "I'm sorry. I never should have invited him. I didn't know he was still like that." For the first time, I didn't feel bitter toward her. We'd both been caught in the orbit of the same kind of man, the one who mistakes attention for affection and control for connection. One evening, I sat on my reclaimed couch, the one he thought he was entitled to, and pulled out an old notebook. On the first page, I wrote in block letters, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them." Then I made 2 columns. Left side, what he showed me. Right side, what I believed instead. He showed me dismissal. When I asked for respect, I believed he just needed time. He showed me gaslighting when I questioned him. I believed I was too sensitive. He showed me that my boundaries annoyed him. I believed compromise was love. Reading those lines back felt like looking at old scars. Faint, but still real. So I flipped the page and started a new list. What I'll no longer accept. Anyone who treats my peace as punishment. Anyone who confuses forgiveness with forgetting. anyone who calls self-respect overreaction. A few nights later, I ran into my sister Dar at our favorite cafe. She studied my face for a long second before smiling. "You look different." "Better," I asked. "Free?" she said simply. We clinked our mugs together, and for the first time in a long time, I laughed without that undercurrent of exhaustion I used to carry everywhere. She leaned in. "So have you talked to him?" "No," I said. "And I won't. What if he tries again?" I smiled. Then I'll remember what it felt like to breathe in my own apartment. Last week, I redecorated the final corner, the space where his desk used to be. I turned it into a reading nook. Small bookshelf, soft light, a chair big enough to curl up in. It's funny. That corner used to be his territory. The place where he sat for hours, scrolling, sulking, or talking down to me. Now it's mine. And every night when I sit there with a book, the light spilling across the pages, I think about how far I've come from the woman who flinched at being told, "Don't wait up." Maybe he'll keep telling his story. Maybe in his version, I'll always be the villain who overreacted. But the truth isn't a competition, it's a mirror. And when he looks in his, he'll see why I walked away. As for me, I've stopped chasing closure. I already found it in the quiet hum of my reclaimed home, in the strength that comes from choosing dignity over drama, and in the realization that self-respect doesn't ruin lives, it rebuilds them. So if you ask me now what disrespect feels like, I'll tell you it's a warning, not a wound. And if you listen the first time, it won't have to become a scar.